video, I'll be summarizing the events of the Cold War which happened right after World War II all the way to the fall of USSR, which was not until 1991. This will be listed through years, and I'll try to go through every major event of the Cold War. The AP US History class will also be covering this material, and if this video doesn't include something, the class material will. Okay, let's start. 1945. The Allies agree in Potsdam to the fundamental conditions of the occupation of Germany. Germany will be divided into four parts, with Berlin also being divided into four parts. One for Soviet Union, one for America, one for England, one for France, one for France. American nuclear bombs destroy Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan surrender in 1945 also. In 1947, the Truman Doctrine comes into place. The U.S. will offer assistance to any country that is threatened by communism, especially Greece and Turkey. The U.S. Secretary of State George C. Marshall he announces a massive aid program for the reconstruction of World War II torn Europe, and this is known as the Marshall Plan. Before we start with more details, you have to know why these two countries fought as they did. At the end of the war, Europe was in ruins. Both countries, America and Russia, they both had totally different ideas on how to rebuild it. President Truman tried cleaning up the mess and giving financial aid to countries. He helped create the World Bank, and he funded the rebuilding of Japan. After the Nuremberg trials, he set forth the Marshall Plan. Stalin, on the other hand, had a different vision. Although Russia helped in founding the United Nations, he and Truman would fight on nearly every single issue. Stalin wanted a buffer zone between Germany and Russia so that Germany would never be able to go past Russia. He did this go attack Russia. He did this by setting up puppet communist governments in countries such as Poland and Hungary. Truman thought that communism was bad for American interests and therefore tried to stop it, while Stalin, on the other hand, thought capitalism was detrimental to their economy and tried to stop that as well. These two different mindsets helped fuel the separation of the two superpowers. Okay. In 1948, the communists will take power in Czechoslovakia. Also in 1948, the Soviet blockade of West Berlin begins on June 24. Cut off from the outside world, provisions are delivered by a massive airlift. This is the first major Berlin crisis during the Cold War. On May 12, 1949, the blockade will be lifted. Truman was also busy with domestic policies. In 1948, he signed the National Security Act to restructure American defenses against communism. This not only saw the formation of the National Security Council and new offices for security of defense and joint chiefs of staff, but also saw the formation of the CIA. This was a time of espionage. This can also be seen in the movie Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
He said Tar called him from the phone box.
He said there's a mole right at the top of the circus, that he's been there for years.
This is showing that Americans didn't feel safe anymore. This is how the Red Scare came into play. Americans were afraid that there were communists that were infiltrating the government and trying to dismantle it. This was led mostly by Senior McCarthy and McCarthyism. In 1949, April 14, the NATO treaty is signed in Washington. Also in 1949, on May 23, the Federal Republic of Germany is established. Not long after, on October 7, the Communist German Democratic Republic (GDR) is founded. Also in 1949, August 29, 1949, the Soviets will detonate their first atomic bomb. Whatever America does, Russia isn't far behind, and this is vice versa. America built a hydrogen bomb, and Russians followed suit. As America keeps stockpiling weapons, Russia does also. This not only includes weapons, the army increases, the navy sees major improvements, and submarines are becoming more common. This is called the arms race. America also participates in the space race, with Russia in the lead, by sending a man and a dog to space. America responds, and although there were failed attempts, America finally sent a man to the moon and came back safely. This is the ideal of brinkmanship. This is when two countries will keep the dangerous policies right until war. This can be seen in the movie The Hunt for Red October.
Today's the 23rd, isn't it?
What?
Today is the 23rd, isn't it?
Yeah.
You son of a bitch!
You wish to add something to our discussion, Dr. Ryan?
Well, sir, I was just thinking that perhaps there's another possibility we might consider. Ramius might be trying to defect.
Do you mean to suggest that this man has
Proceed, Mr. Ryan.
Well, Ramius trained most of their officer corps, which would put him in a position to select men willing to help him. And he's not Russian. He's Lithuanian by birth, raised by his paternal grandfather, a fisherman. And he has no children, no ties to leave behind. And today is the first anniversary of his wife's death.
Oh, come on. You're just an analyst. What can you possibly know what goes on in this mine?
I know Ramius, General. He's nearly a legend in the submarine community. He's been a maverick his entire career. I actually met him once at an embassy dinner. Have you ever met Captain Ramius, General?
Admiral Hollis, how long before Ramius could be in a position to fire his missiles at us?
4 days.
All right. I'll brief the president. That'll be all, gentlemen. Dr. Ryan, would you stay for a moment, please?
I said, speak your mind, Jack, but Jesus.
You slammed the door on the general pretty hard, Jack.
That was not my intention, sir.
Oh, yes, it was. He was patronizing you, and you stomped on him. My opinion, he deserved it. Listen, I'm a politician, which means I'm a cheat and a liar. And when I'm not kissing babies, I'm stealing their lollipops. But it also means that I keep my options open. So, let's assume for a minute that you're right, and this Russian intends to defect. What do you suggest we do about it?
Busy morning.
During the night, a line of Russian attack subs have taken up station off every East Coast port. Now we're up here. The New Jersey and her group are moving up the coast, while the Russians, aside from maybe 100 more Bear Foxtrots, have a row of attack subs, followed by several surface groups.
That's an awful lot of firepower.
For a rescue team, yes. There's something else strange. They're banging away with their active sonar as if they're looking for something, but nobody's listening.
What do you mean?
Well, they're moving at close to 30 knots. At that speed, they could run over my daughter's stereo and not hear it.
They're not trying to find Ramius, they're trying to drive him.
Drive him where?
The hounds to the hunters.
Your sub-captain's gonna make it to America, all right, Mr. Ryan.
America will respond with the same threat. There are Russian submarines that are organizing, and so America starts organizing their subs too. Both America and Russia distrust each other, and even the ambassadors lie to each other in order to hide the truth. This can be seen also in the movie The Hunt for Red October, which shows a scene where both ambassadors are talking.
Naval activities? I have no knowledge of this. But then, of course, I never was a sailor.
Mr. Ambassador, you have nearly 100 naval vessels operating in the North Atlantic right now. Your aircraft has dropped enough sonar buoys so that a man could walk from Greenland to Iceland to Scotland without getting his feet wet. Now, shall we dispense with the bull?
You make your point as delicately as ever, Mr. Pelt. But the sea has...
And what looks like an exercise could be a prelude to war. How can we tell the difference? Prudence demands that we deploy our ships to observe yours. It would be well for your government to consider that, having your ships and ours, your aircraft and ours, in such proximity is inherently dangerous. Wars have begun that way, Mr. Ambassador.
We have lost one of our submarines.
Lost it?
We fear she may be down, and, well, this is most embarrassing, but several of the crew, of the officers, are sons of high party officials. One is even the son of a Central Committee member. I cannot say which, of course.
You're telling me that this is a massive rescue operation?
That is correct.
After winning the country's civil war, the Communist Party under Mao Zedong established the People's Republic of China. America has a theory that if one country falls to communism, then the neighboring countries will also fall to communism. This is called the domino theory. This is further established when America saw the fall of Korea and also Vietnam falling towards communism. America sent ambassadors to China in order to persuade them to remain in capitalism. This next scene shows a clip from Forrest Gump where it talks about ambassadors going into China.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I thought I was going back to Vietnam, but instead they decided the best way for me to fight the communists was to play ping pong. So I was in the special services, traveling around the country, cheering up all them wounded veterans and showing them how to play ping pong. I was so good that some years later, the Army decided that I should be on the All-America ping pong team. We were the first Americans to visit the land of China in like a million years or something like that. Somebody said world peace was in our hands, but all I did was play ping pong. When I got home, I was a national celebrity.
1950 to 1953, the Korean War. After North Korea attacked South Korea, UN troops led by the United States invade the country. This is not a war, it's called Korean conflict. China and the Soviet Union back up North Korea. The ceasefire leaves the two countries with pre-war status quo. 1952, Joseph Stalin, he offers to hold negotiations for the reunification of Germany on the condition that a united Germany remain neutral. With the support of the West German parliament, the Western Allied powers reject the offer. 1953, June 17, a workers' uprising in East Germany is crushed by Russian tanks. 1955, the Federal Republic of Germany will join NATO and form the Bundeswehr, the first German army to exist after Hitler's fall. 1956, Hungarian uprising takes place, starting on October 20, but is also ultimately crushed by the Russians. Also in 1956, from October 29 to November 6, the Suez Canal takes place. Egypt tries to nationalize the Suez Canal, but Israel, France, and Great Britain occupy the canal zone and bomb Egyptian airfields. The Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev threatens London and Paris with nuclear war. 1961. The construction of the Berlin Wall begins on August 13. The Berlin Wall was a major symbolism of the Iron Curtain. The Berlin Wall is a wall that surrounds West Berlin from everything. Um, West Berlin had a wall surrounding its entire perimeter so that people from Communist Germany and Communist Berlin wouldn't be able to go into West Berlin, which was democratic. 1962. After the Soviets positioned nuclear warheads in Cuba, the United States threatens war. The world is on the verge of nuclear war for days. This can be seen in the movie X-Men First Class, which shows a part of the Cuban Missile Crisis. As Americans found out the nuclear warheads, they set up a quarantine around Cuba. There were Russian boats coming with parts of the missiles. If they were to cross the line, there would be war. At the last minute, the Russians turned around. This is also an example of brinkmanship because you can see that both countries push each other right into the edge of war.
Status of the cargo ship.
Bearing 180 at 12 knots. 3 minutes to the embargo line, sir. God help them if they cross it.
God help us all. Sound general quarters.
General quarters, general quarters. All hands man battle stations.
Yes, sir.
Set condition zebra.
General quarters, battle station.
Капитан, мы уже получили приказ. Вам что, нужны новые указания?
Я уже прошел через одну войну, товарищ замполит. Я не хотел бы начинать новую. Боевая готовность! Боевая готовность!
Gun boss. Target cargo ship. Bearing 180.
Вот сообщает. Все огневые средства готовы.
Из Кремля новые приказы. 10:25 грузовому судну «Аральское море» настоящим приказано лечь на обратный курс и вернуться в порт Одесса. «Аральское море», прием! «Аральское море», прием!
Они не получили сообщения. Корабль не поворачивает.
«Аральское море», вам приказано лечь на обратный курс. Не пересекать линию.
Target ready to be fired upon, sir.
Stand by to fire.
Standing by, sir.
Looks pretty messy out there.
«Аральское море», прием! «Аральское море», вам приказано лечь на обратный курс.
Crew of the RLC are all dead. Shaw's been there.
He's still here, somewhere.
He set the ship on course for the embargo line.
That ship crosses the line, our boys are gonna blow it up. And the war begins.
Unless they're not our boys.
USS Independence, this is Alexander Nevsky. We have lost control of our cargo ship. She's been instructed to stop. Do not fire. Repeat, do not fire.
They signaled the cargo ship to turn around, sir.
It's a ruse. Pay no attention. Stand by to fire.
Standing by to fire, sir.
On my count. 5, 4.
U.S., Great Britain, and Soviet Union start to agree to suspend surface and underwater tests of nuclear weapons. In 1965, first U.S. combat troops land in South Vietnam. More than 2 million people will perish during the Vietnam War, mostly civilians. The U.S. withdraws its troops in 1973. 2 years later, the communist North will conquer the southern part of the country. After the war, there are many prisoners of war that are living in horrible conditions under Vietnamese captivity. This saw the split. The Vietnam saw the split in many American beliefs. Some supported the war, while many opposed it. Both of these examples, the POWs and the split of war, can be seen in Rambo: First Blood Part 2.
Incredible. Rambo, you're probably aware that there's almost 2,500 Americans still missing in action in Southeast Asia. Now, most of these boys are presumed killed, but to the League of Families, Congress, and lots of Americans, it's still a very emotional issue. Give me something cold, please. Rambo, you certainly don't know as much about me as I do you. But I hunched with the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines in Khartoum in '66. I lost a lot of good men. So I know what you and every vet feels now. Maybe the government didn't care. Maybe certain segments of the population didn't care. My committee cares.
So what his committee needs is conclusive proof that Americans are being held.
What are you doing? Do you know what the hell you've done?
Don't act so innocent, Colonel. You had your suspicions, and if you suspected then, you're sort of an accessory, aren't you?
Don't ever count me with you and your scum. It was a lie, wasn't it? Just like the whole damn war. It was a lie.
What are you talking about?
That camp was supposed to be empty. Rambo goes in, a decorated vet. He finds no POWs. The Congress buys it, case closed. And if he happens to get caught, nobody knows he's alive except you and your computers. And you can reprogram that, can't you?
Who in the hell do you think you're talking to, Troutman?
A stinking bureaucrat that's trying to cover his ass.
No, not just mine, Troutman. We're talking about a nation's. Besides, it was your hero's fault. Now, if your warrior had gone in, done what the hell he was supposed to do, we'd be out of this clean and simple. He was just supposed to take pictures.
And if those pictures showed something, they would have been lost, wouldn't they?
Oh, Troutman, I still don't think you understand what this is all about.
The same as it always is. Money. In '72, we were supposed to pay the Kong $4.5 billion in war reparations. We reneged. They kept the POWs. And you're doing the same thing all over again.
And what the hell would you do, Troutman? Pay blackmail money to ransom our own men and finance the war effort against our allies? What if some burnout POW shows up on the 6 o'clock news? What do you want to do? Start the war all over again? You want to bomb Hanoi? Want everybody screaming for armed invasion? You think somebody's going to get up on the floor of the United States Senate and ask for billions of dollars for a couple of forgotten ghosts?
Men, goddammit! Men who fought for the country.
That's enough! Troutman, I'm going to forget this conversation ever took place.
You bastard.
And if I were you, I'd never make the mistake of bringing this subject up again.
You're the one who's making the mistake.
Yeah, what mistake?
Rambo.
From the Warsaw Pact, an organization of communist states in Central and Eastern Europe will stamp out the Prague Spring Uprising. In 1969, Negotiations between the United Nations and Soviet Union begin on the reduction of strategic nuclear weapons. The talks end with several treaties in 1979, but the arms race continues unabated. In 1970, the so-called Ostpolitik, a policy of rapprochement with the Eastern Bloc championed by German Chancellor Willy Brandt, begins. His policy of change through conciliation bears its first fruits. The Germans and Russians agree to a treaty that renounces the use of force. Also in 1979, the NATO double-track decision is approved. This enables the U.S. to station 572 Pershing II nuclear warheads in Eastern Europe if the negotiations with the Soviets over the dismantling of SS-20 mid-range missiles fail. The deployment begins in 1983. The following year, in 1980, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan begins in 1979. The U.S. in 1980 imposes sanctions on Russians and boycotts the Moscow Olympic Games. In 1983, U.S. President Ronald Reagan announces the development of a worldwide Star Wars missile defense system with his Strategic Defense Initiative. In 1985, Kremlin chief Mikhail Gorbachev begins to reorient Soviet foreign policy. 2 years later, in 1987, Gorbachev and Reagan agreed to eliminate all land-based intermediate-range missiles. 2 years later, the Berlin falls on November 9th. And then lastly, 1991, the Warsaw Pact is dissolved. Gorbachev resigns and Soviet Union disappears from the map.